Heads of Indiana this morning. Joining us now to talk about leading a state forward, Governor Mitch Daniels. Governor, it's great to see you this morning, and Becky is happy to see you too since she was born, apparently, and I haven't seen the birth certificate. It says she's born in Indiana.
Yeah, I heard. I mean, let's just settle it right now. I don't care where else Becky claims. We're claiming her. We want the credit, and that's that.
Indiana is my real home. My parents are from there, too. All my grandparents. So Indiana is my real home.
Done.
I'm really close to Lawrenceburg, and I mean Cincinnati.
You're right.
I'm very,
you're right
very close. It's a tri-state area. Governor, I got so many things to talk to you about. I'll tell you what I see that you did in Indiana that's bearing all this fruit now, and you got a great approval rating, but it was tough sledding at the beginning. I'm trying to draw those same parallels to what we've seen with Scott Walker or Kasich or Rick Scott as they try to do the same things. But I'm not sure we can say that they're all going to rebound. I don't know whether we're in a different climate now. Can you tell me that they can relax and they've done the right things and eventually joblessness will come down and businesses will come and their states will recover? Or did you have a totally different situation in Indiana?
I tell them because they're doing the right things, they should relax. That's all that matters. Approval ratings don't matter. In the end, elections don't. I can't tell them that joblessness will come down despite them doing all the right things, because we've got a national policy that's as anti-jobs as anyone you could design. And we're all swimming upstream against, really, I think, very counterproductive national decisions.
So that doesn't make any sense. The president wants to get reelected. Does he not understand that these policies are anti-jobs, or has he got a bigger agenda, a longer-term social agenda?
I think the latter statement's probably true. Maybe he doesn't understand where jobs come from or how incredibly destructive it is to pile barriers, taxes, regulations, and threats of more of the same in their way. That's what this administration has been doing since the minute they got there. I mean, look at the depth of this recession. All of historical evidence says we should have had a very sharp snapback from a drop that deep, and instead it's the most pathetic recovery we've seen. It's very frustrating, to be building the best pro-growth climate one can in a state like ours, and always, as I say, be swimming upstream.
Governor Daniels, Andrew Sorkin here. I just want to take issue with this idea that somehow we were supposed to have a snapback. And I'm thinking about a book called This Time is Different that has looked at economic crises over the past century. And ultimately, in a crisis of this proportion, you usually have a deep recession that lasts something on the order of 5 to 6 to even 7 years. And so if you really date where we are today on a historical basis, this idea that somehow we were supposed to have a snapback, I'm not so sure is true.
Yeah, I read the book, and I agree. The financial recessions, so to speak, are different and do linger longer. But still, just look at the last couple job reports, even factoring for that the truth of that analysis. This one is really very weak, and it's very, very threatening to our long-term future, both economic and consequently fiscally.
Yeah, that 6-year number is so good, though, for certain sides of the argument, though, Governor. That will take us into the second year of the president's second term, and it'll still be George Bush's recession and economy, which is, I still feel like in certain sectors, I'm told every day that this is George Bush's economy anyway. I mean, they still don't own it, do they?
Well, I guess it depends who you ask, but I don't think the American people will buy the idea that after soon, 3 and soon 4 years of these policies that the Obama administration had nothing to do with the fix we're in.
Let me say hi to the governor. We at Freedom Works and, of course, our activists across the country so much admire you, Governor, and the work that you've done. And I believe that the governor, by virtue, frankly, of his matter-of-fact, business-like, stoic personality, this is the guy that doesn't need to be surrounded by sensation, but he really rolls up his sleeves and gets to work. And the governor had the advantage over our current governors in having done this quietly and firmly in a less politically explosive climate, but definitively well done. Governor, I can't help but make the point. I always love a man that loves his wife most, as you said, but we do miss you in this election cycle. We're sorry for that loss, but we do appreciate your good work, and I think you've set a good example, and your advice is well put to the other governors. Go about your business with a firm resolve and a quiet demeanor, and you get it done. And understand the gimme gang is always going to be out there crying for more government handdogs. You just got to say no to them. That's all, like you did.
Well, as long as we got Dick Armey on the ramparts out there in Washington, I feel like there's hope. So thank you, sir.
Well, Governor, here's what scares me. You did it quietly. Take Wisconsin, for example. The recall elections are starting today. He tried to do what you did. We saw his whole Democratic side of his legislature left town. Nothing happened. They were welcomed back, according to Andrew's paper, as conquering heroes when they came back. Now the recall is not for those guys that didn't vote and left their job. The recall is for the Republicans that voted for what finally became law in Wisconsin. That's totally different than what's happened in Indiana. It makes me wonder whether already the Republicans have overplayed their hands, and 2012 could be a snapback from 2010.
Well, your guess is as good as mine. I would just say that with an economy this weak, and I just don't see much prospect of improvement. I wish I did. We'll report tomorrow on the fiscal year that just closed here in Indiana. We're going to report a surprisingly strong surplus. Everybody knew we'd have one, but it looks like we overachieved. But we're much in the situation of a lot of those businesses you just talked to Bill Dunkelberg about. Looking ahead into this economy, whether you're running a private or a public enterprise, it is very, very questionable whether anybody has cause for new investments of any kind. That caution is really the watchword, and until we see some much brighter signs than we see right now, we're going to be very, very careful. And I'm not at all surprised that those small businesses you talked about see no reason to hire anybody full time or to grow.
Governor Daniels, I have two questions for you. First of all, when you look among the Republicans who are still trying to figure out who would get the Republican nomination, who would you support?
Don't know yet. I like them all, frankly, and I think there are a lot of people there could make good presidents. I'll be listening to what they say and who shows the most forthrightness in talking to the American people about the debt we've piled up, the very common sense, non-painful things we can do to not to punish the next generation, but to leave them, as it's our duty to do, a better America.
The debt is the second part of that question. If you were in the room, would you be willing to look at, let's say, Simpson Bowles as a solution for starting on that? I mean, that was a bipartisan effort, and it was not something that passed overwhelmingly on the panel, but it got a significant number of supporters from both sides of the aisle. Would you go along with some of the recommendations that they made? Yeah,
a lot of them. And if I agreed with all of them, it wouldn't have a chance, and that'd be the same for anybody. In the end, probably everyone, barring some sweeping, massive victory by one side or the other, probably everyone's going to have to accept a couple things that weren't their first or second choice. Mm-hmm. But the alternative to that is to drift over Niagara Falls. That would be the worst default on public responsibility probably in the history of our republic. So yeah, there was a lot to like in there. In particular, I'd go further, of course. I'd like to see a more dramatic tax simplification that gets this economy growing, much lower, flatter rates, neutral across different kinds of investments. Let's get rid of as many of the special preferences, the distortions they cause as we possibly can. Mm-hmm. But they pointed in the right direction there, and I could give you other examples.
They did though look at raising revenue, and again, some of that was done through lowering the tax quote overall, the tax rate overall. But they did look at ways to raise revenue, and that's something that you would go along with if you got everything else that was in the package.
It's so important to say, of course we need more revenue. Mm-hmm. If we're going to pay the country's bills. The question is, how do you get it? If you try to squeeze the same twisted, the special interest-driven tax system we have today, you'll never get the revenue, and you'll do a lot of inequity in the process. You know, the revenue we must have can only come from one place, really, and that's an economy growing at about 2 to 3 times the current rate. Yeah. And every day that goes by with these pathetically low growth rates is a day we go much deeper in debt, even when we don't raise spending.
Governor, do you think that, let's say that let's just assume this, that the president was acting in good faith with the $4 trillion and really did want to work with the other side. Do you think that the Republicans are in a position to give him a win in this scenario, this deficit, to put on the mantle of deficit cutter at this point, or before 2012, or do you think the Republicans would have said no to anything?
I don't think they'd have said no to anything. I don't think they care if he gets a win as long as Americans in America get a win. And, you know, but they're absolutely right. You know, we've been down this primrose path before. When Congress gets talking about this subject, the taxes will always happen. The spending cuts very often don't. And I think they're exactly right that spending is the problem here. Mm-hmm. And this is only going to be the first step after all, even if it's a big one, and I hope it will be. But it's only going to be the first step, and it's absolutely a sound policy to say, look, $1 or more of spending for every extra dollar you want to borrow, and then we'll get back together and talk about step 2.
Yep, and that'll be in probably 2012. All right, well, there's a lot to watch between now and then. We hope to have you on and talk again and again, Governor. Thank you for your time today.